Every time you understand something, religion becomes less likely. Only with the discovery of the double helix and the ensuing genetic revolution have we had grounds for thinking that the powers held traditionally to be the exclusive property of the gods might one day be ours. When asked by a student if he believes in any gods, "Oh, no. Absolutely not. The biggest advantage to believing in God is you don't have to understand anything, no physics, no biology." I wanted to understand. As a young man, I came to the conclusion that the church was just a bunch of fascists that supported Franco. I stopped going on Sunday mornings and watched the birds with my father instead. One could not be a successful scientist without realizing that, in contrast to the popular conception supported by newspapers and mothers of scientists, a goodly number of scientists are not only narrow-minded and dull, but also just stupid. Today, the theory of evolution is an accepted fact for everyone but a fundamentalist minority, whose objections are based not on reasoning but on doctrinaire adherence to religious principles. At lunch Francis winged into the Eagle to tell everyone within hearing distance that we had found the secret of life. People say we are playing God. My answer is, if we don't play God, who will? Briefly, the Indiana biochemists encouraged me to learn organic chemistry, but after I used a Bunsen burner to warm up some benzene, I was relieved from further true chemistry. It was safer to turn out an uneducated PhD than to risk another explosion. I've had strong opinions probably since I was born. It makes you unpopular, but what can you do? Worrying about complications before ruling out the possibility that the answer was simple would have been damned foolishness. On the other hand, the sun of Naples might be conducive to learning something about the biochemistry of the embryonic development of marine animals. Most academic battles involve space or faculty appointments and promotions. Al Hershey had sent me a long letter from Cold Spring Harbor summarizing the recently completed experiments by which he and Martha Chase established that a key feature of the infection of a bacterium by a phage was the injection of the viral DNA into the host bacterium. Most important, very little protein entered the bacterium. Their experiment was thus a powerful new proof that DNA is the primary genetic material. Nonetheless, almost no one in the audience of over 400 microbiologists seemed interested as I read long sections of Hershey's letter. Obvious exceptions were André Lwoff, Seymour Benzer, and Gunther Stent, all briefly over from Paris. They knew that Hershey's experiments were not trivial and that from then on everyone was going to place more emphasis on DNA. To most of the spectators, however, Hershey's name carried no weight. One could not be a successful scientist without realizing that, in contrast to the popular conception supported by newspapers and mothers of scientists, a goodly number of scientists are not only narrow-minded and dull, but also just stupid. The key to Linus' success was his reliance on the simple laws of structural chemistry. The alpha helix had not been found by only staring at X-ray pictures. The essential trick, instead, was to ask which atoms like to sit next to each other. In place of pencil and paper, the main working tools were a set of molecular models superficially resembling the toys of preschool children. When you do the common things in an uncommon way, you'll command the attention of the world. There is perhaps no more heartening proof of the role of environment in human intelligence than the Flynn effect, the worldwide phenomenon of upwardly trending IQ, named for the New Zealand psychologist who first described it. Since the early years of the 20th century, gains have ranged between 9 and 20 points per generation in the United States, Britain, and other industrialized nations for which reliable datasets are available. With our knowledge of evolutionary processes, we can be sure of one thing: we are not seeing wholesale genetic change in the global population. No, these changes must be recognized as largely the fruits of improvement in overall standards both of education and of health and nutrition. Other factors as yet not understood doubtless play a role, but the Flynn effect serves nicely to make the point that even a trait whose variation is largely determined by genetic differences is in the end significantly malleable. We are not mere puppets upon whose strings our genes alone tug. Though only about one-half the mass of a bacterial virus was DNA, the other half being protein, Avery's experiment made it smell. O.T. Avery was carrying out experiments at the Rockefeller Institute in New York which showed that hereditary traits could be transmitted from one bacterial cell to another by purified DNA molecules. I don't think we're for anything, we're just products of evolution. You can say, gee, your life must be pretty bleak if you don't think there's a purpose, but I'm anticipating a good lunch. Pero preocuparse por las complicaciones antes de eliminar la posibilidad de que la respuesta fuera sencilla era una completa tontería.